Can you imagine coming all the way to Iceland to witness this beautiful, quiet, pristine nature, but instead experiencing this? Not exactly the quiet, life-changing moment you were hoping for, is it? But don't worry, there is a way to avoid all of that. In fact, in this video, I'll share with you 5 game-changing ways to experience Iceland completely without the crowds. Like it's still the 90s before the tourism boom. And so whether you are planning a trip in summer or winter, these tips will help you experience the island the way it was always meant to be. Wild, quiet, and unforgettable. So let's dive in. Alright, so let's start with my favorite recommendation and also the easiest way to avoid crowds, and that's simply travel during the winter. Because while summer sees tourists flocking to popular spots like south of Iceland and Golden Circle, winter is a completely different experience. In fact, winter is the best time of the year if you want to visit all those iconic places that are normally packed with people during the summer months. Personally, I don't even visit those places in the summer anymore because honestly, I just have zero interest in standing in line just to take a photo, while 5 amateur drone pilots buzz their drone above my head. And winter in Iceland doesn't just mean fewer tourists. It also means cheaper accommodations and overall a completely different vibe. You can experience the northern lights, soft light and snow-covered landscapes, and frozen waterfalls, all while feeling like you have the place all to yourself. And I know that Iceland in winter might sound challenging to some of you, and sure enough, it does come with its challenges. The days are short and the weather, that can be quite unpredictable. But trust me, it is not so crazy if you know what to expect and you are well prepared, which is something that I have so many videos about on my channel, which you can check out later. Overall, I just think that the winter is the best time of the year if you want to visit the most popular places like the Golden Circle, all the jewels of South Iceland, and other famous spots around the island like Kirkjufell on Snæfellsnes Peninsula or Godafoss waterfall in North Iceland. Okay, but what if you still want to visit Iceland in the summer but don't really want to feel like you are visiting a theme park? What should you do then? And here is a little tip which sometimes can be a bit challenging, but here it goes. Just travel during the night. And before you shake your head and skip to the next step, just hear me out. You see, the sun doesn't fully set in Iceland during the summer, and this gives you an amazing opportunity to visit the most popular sites while everyone else is sleeping. I actually started experiencing with this a couple of times last summer, and it's just something very hard to describe. Just imagine being the only car on the road for miles and being completely alone at places that would normally be absolutely packed with people. It is the most serene feeling you can imagine, because literally the only thing that you hear is the sounds of the nature. Plus, the evening light that you'll get is just out of this world. But of course, it is challenging in the sense that you basically have to completely switch your body clock and you might feel disoriented, especially in the beginning. But this kind of travel is great, especially for those of you renting a van, because you don't have to worry about check-in and check-out times, and you can just travel at your own pace. And you simply just sleep during the day and then get your adventures in during the night. It's not only an excellent way to avoid the crowds, but you'll also get to see Iceland in a completely different light, literally. And the silence of Icelandic countryside at night is just something that you'll never forget. And so trust me, if you are here to experience the quiet Iceland like it's still the 90s, then this is an excellent way to do it. Tip number 3 to avoid crowds is, in my opinion, quite obvious, but it is also an important step that you can take to avoid crowds, and that is to simply rent a car. And I know that not everybody has a driving license, but personally, I would rather try to find a travel buddy, even online, rather than traveling with the bus. And I'm not saying that booking a bus tour is all bad, but if you compare the pros and cons, then traveling by car is just a complete game changer. Forget about the crowds packed into buses, only visiting the same crowded sites over and over. Having a car gives you a complete freedom to explore Iceland on your terms. You won't be stuck waiting for the people to get off the bus or just rushing through the places only because there is a schedule to keep. And having a car will simply give you a freedom to stop whenever you want and mainly wherever you want, which gives you the chance to visit all those hidden gems that you wouldn't be able to visit with the bus tour. Iceland is simply full of places like that, which are just waiting to be explored. And if you rent a 4-wheel drive, you will be able to access even more remote locations, like for example some places in Highlands. Plus, let's be honest, it is just way more comfortable, you know. There is no cramped buses, no scheduled stops and no waiting around, and you just get the real Iceland experience. Alright, let's now talk about the common mistake that basically leads everybody to the same places, and that's the mainstream travel guides. Please do not follow mainstream travel guides. And I know it is very tempting to simply Google 10 best places to visit in Iceland. And while these lists can be useful, they also tend to highlight the same places over and over. And what I want to encourage you to do is just be more spontaneous with your trip. Just don't be afraid to venture off the beaten paths. The most memorable experiences that I've had in Iceland weren't at the big tourist sites, but at the smaller, lesser known spots that I stumbled upon along the way. And you don't need to see everything that's popular to have an amazing trip. In fact, all those smaller unknown places will most likely leave a more vivid memory. And I have actually created a self-planning guide and map to basically help you discover all those beautiful yet less visited places in Iceland. It is the perfect way to navigate the island and get off the tourist trail, so you can really experience Iceland like a local. There are over 800 places to visit, ranging from the most popular ones to all kinds of hidden gems, viewpoints, but also the best restaurants and unique places to stay along the way. This is something that I have originally created for myself to basically research places and plan my own travels around the island. And as the guide grew, I also decided to give the access to others as well. But don't just take my word for it and take a look at some of the latest reviews from the people who have used it. All those hidden gems without crowds of people. Do you know what's another good way to find them? Simple, it's hiking. And I'm not talking about trekking over the mountains for hours just to reach a spot. What I really mean is visiting places that require you to only hike like 15 or 30 minutes. And you know why most of these places are actually half empty? It's pretty simple, and that's because most of the people are pretty lazy and they only visit the places where all they have to do is to just hop out of the car. If you can find and add places to your itinerary that require a little bit of hiking, especially in the summer, you would be surprised how few people you will actually come across, even in the busiest parts of Iceland. And also, many waterfalls and sites have different ways that you can approach them. For example, if you can take an hour-long hike to walk down into the canyon of a waterfall, rather than just standing on the viewing platform, you will leave all the annoying crowds and be able to have the beauty to yourself, or maybe share it with just a couple of other adventurous souls. The downside is that it can be time and energy consuming, which means that it isn't very ideal if you want to see as much as you can in a limited time. But still, it is something to consider or at least mix into your itinerary. And doing it this way will allow you to slow down the pace a little bit. And let's face it, escaping the crowds and leaving behind all the smokers, Karens in high heels and all the annoying individuals is always welcome, basically no matter what it takes. And finally, tip number 6, and that is to visit one of those more remote regions of Iceland. During the summer, places like Golden Circle, South Iceland, and lately even some areas of Snæfellsnes Peninsula can sometimes feel like theme parks. And so if you want to escape the crowds, head to the Westfjords, North Iceland, the Highlands, or Eastfjords. These areas are still pretty under the radar, and they offer some of the most stunning landscapes that you'll ever see. But that doesn't mean that you should skip south completely, you know, it is popular for a reason. It hosts some of the most beautiful places on the island, which everyone visiting Iceland, especially for the first time, should see. But if I could choose, then visit south of Iceland in the winter. And then, when it's busy, just try to visit other regions of Iceland and spend more time there. And you know, you can book a place for like 2 nights or more and simply just explore around in a slower pace, basically like you live there. And that will allow you to explore some hidden gems and overall experience the more quiet and relaxed side of Iceland. And by the way, in the summer I actually rent my little cabin here in the mountains of Troll Peninsula. And so if you need a place to stay in one of the most beautiful valleys in Iceland, then there'll be a link for you below to check out. And so, are some of the places in Iceland overcrowded, and do some places feel like a tourist trap? Sure, yeah, and I mean, there is nothing that we can really do about it, but does that mean that you can't really experience the wild side of Iceland anymore? You know, the similar atmosphere that people must have experienced when visiting Iceland during the times like the 90s. Personally, I still think that it is absolutely possible. The only thing that you have to keep in mind is that you basically just need to be a little bit more strategic when planning your trip. Like take this place for example, which I recently made a video about. Visiting it truly felt like time has stopped. And so if you need some inspiration, this is something you might want to check out next. And I hope to see you there.